take a person and you put them in one environment, they behave one way. You take the same person, you put them in a different environment, they behave very differently. Our power is to design our environment in a different way. I was burned in about 70% of my body. I was in hospital for almost 3 years. I was kind of plucked out of life and started observing life from a very different perspective. Some of our most important economic activities are invisible. I want people to realize how difficult money is, what are some of their own mistakes, and to think to themselves which one they want to fix. I hate human waste. I try to think about how can we structure things differently to fulfill our potential in a better way.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
Do you behave irrationally? Of course you do, because you're human. But the fascinating part is that your irrational behavior is predictable. And that's what my guest this week is here to talk to me about: how you cheat, how you should be spending your money more intelligently, how you should be eating better. All of this stuff can be predicted, and he's here to teach us how we can do it. Dan's a fascinating guy. 70% of his body was burned when he was 18 years old. And so he had no choice for 3 years than just to observe people because he couldn't really move himself. And he now has become a behavioral economist, and he can teach us things about ourselves, things that we do in a weird way, and yet it's predictable, and how altering these behaviors can show us how to save more money, to eat more intelligently, and just be better humans. And I know you're really going to enjoy this episode. Inside London Real Academy, we're gearing up for our Broadcast Yourself course, 8 weeks where I show you how to start from nothing and create a world-class podcast. So you can interview all these fascinating people, and then I show you how to turn it into a business so you can make money and scale your message. It's super exciting, lots of great courses inside the Academy, and here's a little bit more about it.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dan Ariely, the world-renowned behavioral economist and 3-time New York Times bestselling author. You assert that humans are not as rational as we think we are, yet this irrational behavior is also highly predictable. You're a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University, and your TED Talks have been viewed over 10 million times. Your latest book, Small Change, Money Mishaps and How to Avoid Them, delves into the truly illogical world of personal finance. Dan, welcome to London Real.
Love to be here. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here. When you come to London, I'm curious, do you see little pockets of irrational thinking? You must see that when you go to different countries and watch different cultures and say, they're doing this that way.
It's really interesting to think about cultural differences, and it really depends on the level in which you observe our irrationalities, and I'll tell you what I mean. When it comes to basic behaviors, think about visual illusions, we're the same world over, right? But as the behavior gets more complex and more embedded in a particular context, then it becomes more differentiated by culture. And here's an experiment. We've done lots of research on dishonesty. We tempt people to steal money from us. and the way we do it, one way, is we take a die, a six-sided die, and we say to people, toss the die, we'll see what it comes up on, we'll pay you whatever it comes up on. It comes on $6, you get $6, $5, and so on and so forth. But you can get paid based on the top side or the bottom, top or bottom, you decide, but don't tell us. So keep it in mind. So I give you a die and I say, Brian, think top or bottom, don't tell me. You have it? Yes. Now roll the die, and let's say it came with 5 on the bottom and 2 on the top. And now I say, what did you pick? If you picked bottom, you say bottom, and you get $5. If you pick top, you have a dilemma. Do you say the truth, top, and get $2, or do you change your mind and say bottom? And the point is that it's in your mind, but there's no evidence for it. You can say something different. And we get people to do it 20 times. So every time they write on a piece of paper, the die came on 5 and 2, I chose bottom, I deserve 5. The die came on 6 and 1, I chose top, and so on. When people do it 20 times, you find that people are extra lucky. People cheat. Right. Lots of people cheat a little bit. Now, this game we took and we played it in lots of countries. So I grew up in Israel, we played it in Israel. What do you think? The Israelis cheat more or less than the Americans?
I don't know, the same.
It's just the same, the same. Francesca Gino, my Italian collaborator, said, come to Italy, we'll show you what the Italians can do, but the Italians cheat just the same. Okay. We tried Turkey, Germany, Portugal, the UK, we tried Kenya, South Africa, Colombia, Japan, China, Sweden. Anyway, people cheat just the same.
Same, because in some of our minds, some of these countries are more honest than the others.
That's right, and they are. And so Kenya is leading the world in corruption, right? And if you've been to other countries, you see that corruption or dishonesty is very different. So how do we explain this? Our experiment is general and abstract, and it's not part of the culture. And because of that, we're kind of the same over. Okay. Like the whole world, it's just the same. Now, it doesn't mean that culture doesn't matter. Culture comes and apply overriding behavior in a specific silo. So in South Africa, it's okay to bribe a policeman. Right? It doesn't mean that people cheat their friends in poker more. Okay. But in the US, it's okay to download illegal content online. In the UK, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but cultures don't change the backbone of humanity. They just change how we apply our rules, our psychology in a specific domain, and sometimes there's an overarching principle. So when you think about cultural differences, at the core level, which is often what interests me more, we're really all the same. But when it gets to be applied in different areas, it gets to be applied differently. And that's kind of the way to think about it. And when it's applied in silos. So it doesn't mean that Brits are overall more honest or less. It just means that when it comes to a particular area, like being polite, they don't tell you what they really think. They care more about politeness than honesty, for example.
I used to have an Italian client in the city, and he would make fun of all the Qs in England. He said in Italy, every man for himself. Right. And here, there's always the Q. Yeah. I guess that's kind of a form of not cheating.
That's right.
But yeah. it's a cultural thing.
That's right, exactly. So you say, in Qs, we don't have this. But if you look at the scandals in banking, for example, you wouldn't say the British are just more proper and rule-abiding than other countries.
No.
But Qs, the specific rules about how to behave.
Right. And on the same flip side, I think my same client used to say that cheating on your taxes in Italy was almost a sport.
Yes.
And yet, that is less of a norm here.
Yeah.
So, all right, so there's cultural pieces, but empirically as humans, we all kind of cheat the same.
So when we cheat on a task that is abstract and general, we're the same. But if you live in the UK, you're taught not to cheat on taxes and to stand on a queue. So you have the same instinct underlying it, but when it comes to a specific context, society defines this context for you and tell you what's acceptable and not.
Okay. You have a Netflix, series, movie about dishonesty. Before we get into the personal finance, what else did you learn about humans cheating, dishonesty?
A lot. So one of the things we learned was that it's really easy to corrupt people. So imagine the same experiment. You come to the lab and we describe to you this experiment and we say, look, Brian, we have two versions of this game today. One version, the exchange rate between dots and money is such that at most you can make today is $4. The second version is such that at most you can make today is $40. So they're the same, either $4 max or $40 max. Why don't you flip a coin? And we'll see which one you get. You flip a coin and no matter what you flip, we say, sorry, you got the $4 version. And now the research assistant looks around and he says, listen, my boss is not here today. So I'll tell you what, you got $3 to show up for the experiment, to pay for the bus fare. If you'll give me those $3, I'll pretend you got the other coin flip. So the research assistant is basically asking for a bribe. Now,
you love this stuff, don't you?
I do love this stuff.
Okay.
But, well, it gets a little sad. Here's the first question. What percentage of people bribed him? What do you think? These are undergrads in Duke, but it doesn't matter.
And this is to get $40 instead of $4.
Yes.
So real money for these undergrads.
Yeah.
Okay, what percentage bribed him? 1/3?
90%.
90%.
Okay. And what happened after they bribed him? Remember, they moved from $4 to $40. Did they cheat more or less the same?
You would think they would cheat more for $40.
They do cheat more for $40, and they started stealing. Now, what do I mean by stealing? I told you they have this piece of paper and they say the die came on 5 and 1. I chose the bottom, it's 5. It came on 6 and 1. It is. And then they sum up how many points they have in total, the 20 trials. And then they have a little equation to translate into money. And they calculate it, and then let's say they write $23 and circle it. So we owe them $23. At that point, we could pay them $23, but instead we give them an envelope with $50. And we say, why don't you pay yourself the amount of money you deserve? The amount of money you don't deserve, leave in the envelope. And as you leave the room, there's a big box with envelopes, just drop it there. So now you have two types of opportunities to be dishonest. One is to pretend, I really meant top, I really meant bottom.
Right.
But the other one is to write $23 and take 25, 28, even 50. Usually we find that people cheat but don't steal.
Right, cheat but don't steal.
They remember wrongly what they chose.
Right.
Sometimes, but once they write $23, they take $23. They don't take 25. Even criminals.
Okay.
They do that. This corruption experiment I just described to you is the first time we also saw stealing. People not only remembered wrongly what they picked after they saw the results, but they also wrote $23 and took 25 or 30.
Okay.
Or 40. And here is the sad thought, is that think about what happens when you come to an environment that the person leading it is corrupt. How quickly do we change?
Okay.
And in this particular example, people change dramatically after one experience.
Because the person in charge said, hey, I'm going to let you steal.
The person in charge says, I'm interested in a bribe here.
Right.
It's a corrupt environment.
Oh, so it let them, so then they thought everything was open.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Now imagine...
Making some parallels here to the banking world, perhaps.
Well, there's a banking, there's politics.
Okay.
I mean, imagine that you live in a country where the president is corrupt.
Okay.
Hard to imagine, but just imagine.
Okay.
Or a political leader, or imagine that you work in a company that you feel that the head of it is corrupt. How quickly does it change our moral fiber?
Right.
And I'm not saying that the people who came to our experiment would start cheating in basketball, and other things that do with your friends. But in that particular environment, very quickly we learn terrible lessons about what is acceptable and not.
Really interesting. Okay.
There's much more to say about dishonesty, but the thing is about dishonesty, it's not just about dishonesty. There's a story in the Bible that God comes to Sarah and he says, Sarah, you're going to have a son. And Sarah laughs and she says, how can I have a son when my husband is so old? God says, don't worry, you'll have a son. Then God goes to Abraham and says, Abraham, you're going to have a son. And Abraham says, did you tell Sarah? And God says, yes. And Abraham says, and what did Sarah said? And God said, Sarah said, how could she have a son when she is so old? And the religious scholars wondered, how could God lie? Right? Sarah clearly said, how can I have a son when my husband is so old? And they decided it was okay to lie for peace at home. Now, if you think about this, it means that we as humans have lots of values. Honesty is one of them, but it's not the only one. What happens when values collide? What happens when it's how do you feel about this tie versus honesty, right? It's a nice tie, by the way.
Thank you.
But what happens when I care about the well-being of my company versus honesty? When I care about my own salary, and the reality is that when we study honesty, it's not just about honesty, it's about how we trade different human values with each other. And we have to trade them all the time. And what we find in general is that we don't always trade them in our long-term best interests. And often we succumb to temptation, and our trade-off is more influenced by what we can rationalize than what is actually good for us.
Can you give a good example of short-term versus long-term thinking, and something that's obvious when you look at it as a professor, as a scientist, whereas when someone's in the trenches, for them it seems to be the right decision?
Well, the easiest ones are, of course, overeating, undersaving, not exercising. And you look like a very fit person, so you probably don't indulge too much. But how much do you sleep? Right? You ask people these questions. When in the last month have you overeaten, under-exercised, not saved enough, didn't sleep enough, not always wash your hands when you left the bathroom? You go ahead and
you'll find something.
And there's lots of things that we do that is irrational. And in standard economics, there's this term revealed preferences. We say, what do people want? Let's just see how they behave. And the way they behave means what they want. But if you look at how people behave, it's inconsistent.
Okay.
With what we really want. So the reality is that, and this maybe has been one of the biggest findings in social science the last 40 years, over and over, that the environment matters. The environment matters. You take a person and you put them in one environment, they behave one way. You take the same person, you put them in a different environment, they behave very differently. If I walk you up every morning to a buffet of donuts and muffins and croissants and the smell filling your home, you'll be a different person at the end of the year, right? Now, I'm not saying you'll fail every day, but you'll be a different person. So the environment matters, and the thing about it is that it's kind of both good and bad. On the good side, it means that we actually have power. That there's a power of human free will, but the power is not in resisting the cookie, it's not to expose ourselves to it from the beginning.
Right.
Our power is to design our environment in a different way. Right? If I came and tempted you all the time, life wouldn't be good, but if you redesign your environment, you could live much better. So look at your offices here, right? You design them with a very specific idea in mind. Once you design them in mind, other things follow. Right? If you design them very differently, other things would follow. So human freedom really resides in designing our environment. So that's the good side. The bad side is that we often let other entities design our environment. Think about supermarket. Supermarket is not something that you and I design for our own purposes. Somebody else designed it for their purposes.
Right, it's like a fun house someone else built.
It's a fun house somebody else built.
In order to get your money.
That's right. That's right. And they put different things at eye level, and they put different things at the end of the aisle, and they put different things when you check out. And somebody has a very different goal. And their goal, by the way, is not your long-term well-being. Right? So on one hand, we have power by designing our environment. On the other hand, often somebody else has this power, and therefore they can manipulate us.
Right. And we believe we have a choice when most oftentimes it's an illusion of choice.
Yeah.
You've made that pretty clear with some of your research on organ donation. And
that's right. And so this is a great example, organ donation. So you show that countries where people have what's called an opt-in, that you're not assumed to be an organ donor and you have to sign something to become an organ donor, people don't sign. And countries that people are opt-out, which means that are assumed to be organ donors and they have to sign something not to be, people become organ donors. So there's a big gap. Opt-in, opt-out matters a great deal. But imagine you have a group of people and they go to the Department of Motor Vehicle, and half of them get the opt-in form and half of them get the opt-out form, and they come out. And the people that got the opt-in form don't donate, and the people got the opt-out form donate. And you ask them, why did you choose what you chose? Why did you choose the opt-in people not to donate and the opt-out people to donate? Nobody says the form told me to do so. Nobody says it was opt-in or opt-out. Nobody says I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. They all come up with amazing stories. And the stories are not about the environment, the stories are about them making a decision. So if you got the opt-in form, you would say something like, I'm really worried about where medical science technology is going, all these young physicians, too eager, somebody will disconnect me if something happens. If you got the opt-out form, you will say something like, my parents raised me to be a wonderful, caring human being, I'm just following in their leadership.
so we create a story based on the decision as opposed to the other way around.
That's right. And we use our amazing brain power not to make a decision, but to explain ourselves, to accept afterward why this decision is actually the right one. And our stories are so good that they even convince us. And because of that, we just don't see reality, because we're just so good in coming up with stories all the time.
And how can we be more vigilant when it comes to our own decisions? Try to look at all of these things on face value?
These success secrets are only available on the London Real Academy. Become a member and get access to live shows, exclusive courses, my webinars, bonus content, meetups, live events, an amazing community, and much, much more. Now back to the rest of the show.
All right. And I want to get into this book because when it comes to humans and money, it brings in all sorts of other irrational behavior because it's a very complicated relationship we have with our finances.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about you. What's a nice kid from Tel Aviv doing studying all this crazy stuff?
So as you know, I was badly burned. The reason I have half a beard is not that I'm trying to...
I like the half a beard look.
Like
Yeah, I do.
So this side is because I stopped shaving, and this side is because I have scars. So
how old were you when you were burned?
Almost 18.
18, okay.
Yeah, and I was burned in about 70% of my body. I was in hospital for almost 3 years, and lots of so I learned a lot of new things in hospital, but also a lot of things bothered me.
Okay.
And
was it a frustrating daily process being in there?
Frustrating, I think, is I think to frustrate, you need cognitive capacity. It was painful.
Okay.
And so it's actually much worse. There's an expression, being a pain person. And being a pain person means that you're fully consumed by your pain. And that was me. So there was no, frustration is it's a privilege to experience frustration, right? It's like sense of humor. If you're really in pain, there's really nothing else.
Right. And this is 30 years ago. But I'm guessing that there's not a lot drugs would do anyways because it was 70% of your body. So drugs have improved in the last 30 years, but when I was injured, drugs were not as good as today. Today, they put people with kind of injury that I had in an induced coma.
because there's just no reason to suffer. But at the time, they didn't have the technology to do that, because when you get burned, extensive burns, the whole body fails, right? There's a failure of the liver, of the kidneys, of the lungs, of the heart. It's a stress to the whole body. It's not just the skin, right? You basically have no blood supply. The whole body is in shock for a long time. Lots of people die not from the skin, but die from collapse, the internal collapse of the systems. So it really is a terrible environment, and being in hospital is anyway. So I was in hospital for a long time, and there were some specific things I learned and some general things I learned. And some of the specific things had to do with how the nurses removed my bandages and learned helplessness and pain medications. At the time, they couldn't really give us a lot of pain medications. And we would have this allowance of how many times a day we could get morphine shots.
Morphine drips.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had 6 a day. And sometimes at night I would hear one of the other patients screaming from pain, and the nurse would go to the room and give them an injection, and they would fall asleep quietly. And everybody tracked their own medication, but I would also track other people's medication, part of my obsessive nature. And I knew that person got an extra injection. I would ask the nurse, they got an extra, I want an extra one too. And sometimes she told me it was just saline water, just a placebo. And we've all heard about placebo and so on, but to experience it to know how much pain I have, and to know that person in this other room has the same level of pain, and to realize that they're getting a medication with nothing and they go to sleep, that was incredible. So I learned some general lessons about pain, placebos, removing bandages, learned helplessness. But then the other thing that happens is that I was kind of plucked out of life and was on the bed, and started observing life from a very different perspective. I wasn't part of anything that people were doing. Right? I wasn't eating, I wasn't getting up, I wasn't dating. There was nothing about the human experience that I was a part of for a very long time. And even when I got out of the hospital, I still looked very different and didn't really integrate that well into society, and kept some of this stranger perspective, some of the outside perspective. And it's sometimes a little difficult to live like this, but as a social scientist, it's very useful.
It's perfect for the social scientist, right?
Yeah.
Did that burn then kind of decide your future career? Because now you do exactly that, observe people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and in many ways, it's really amazing to think about where we end up, and kind of like our stories that we tell ourselves, we say we chose it. But the reality is that it came from all kinds of choices we didn't make. And there's one that I know I didn't make. So my first year in university, I studied math and physics. And I chose math and physics because I couldn't use my hands. And in high school, I could do math and physics in my head, so I didn't have to write anything. I couldn't do it at university. It was too much. So I had somebody who would write equations for me, and I would, you can't do homework this way. So I asked my mother to sign me up for philosophy. It's okay, that's something you certainly don't use your hands. I can just flip pages and read. And she went to sign me up for philosophy, and they told that I couldn't take only philosophy. I had to take something else, a double major. They wouldn't let you major only in philosophy. And she asked, what do most people take? And they said psychology. So she signed me up for psychology and philosophy. And when she came back and told me, I was pissed off, because the only thing I knew about psychology was a Freudian psychologist in the burn department that was sometimes making my life more difficult. But then it turns out that it became the passion of my life, is to use psychology as a research tool to understand human behavior. So I know at least some of the elements of luck? And the answer is yes. Like if what motivates me now is that I hate human waste. So if you think about how we waste our time, how we waste our money, how we waste our health, energy, hate, and I look at all of those things, and we're so far away from achieving our potential. Right? And those are the places where I try to think about how can we structure things differently to fulfill our potential in a better way.
Basic behaviors, how we can look at them differently and just make more intelligent long-term decisions.
Yeah, I mean, intelligent, just
Okay.
better. Just
Better, not intelligent, all right.
Doesn't have to be intelligent,
Better.
just has to be better.
Okay. And it's interesting because most people that go into philosophy and psychology don't have a mathematical background. So the fact that you did, it seems to me, from watching your TED Talks and seeing your research, puts you way out ahead, or at least a different perspective than a lot of your colleagues. Because you quantify things, don't you?
Yes, very much. And I'm also kind of looking things very much like an engineer. I basically think about, here's human behavior, here's the ideal one, what are the forces that we can add to push things in the right direction. And I love experiments. I love puzzles and riddles, and looking at what's missing and how can we push behavior to be better.
Okay. Tell me about how we can push behavior differently, say when it comes to government's banking world. We both spent some time at MIT. I was there from 89 to 93. You were there from 98 to 08. I really do love that institution. There's some very special people there, and it's kind of a special place. And I know you had some interesting times there, to say the least. But when I went to Wall Street in 93, I walked into a banking environment where it was, how much money can we rip out of our clients? This is the truth. And I always used to joke to my friends, I said, it's like I was brought up in an abusive home where I would watch my dad beat my mother, and of course then I would beat my girlfriend. And it was a horrible analogy, but I walked in and they said, this is what we do here. These are our clients, but we try to rip as much money as possible. And from the day one, that's how I behaved. Now, maybe it's different now. Maybe it's not. But when you see behavior patterns just like this, right?
And I had lots of students at MIT that kind of were choosing between medical school and banking, right? And they were the same people. And whatever system they chose would dictate the kind of person that they would become.
And you'd see them a few years later.
And it's
they would be either good people or
not
cunts.
so good people. Okay. And this is it really is terrible. But I'll tell you something that has really.
So how can we change that? I guess is what I'm wanting to know.
So let's put on hold for a second the question about culture in banking. But let me give you an example from this became one of my favorite studies, and here's the study. We try to get very poor people in a slum called Kibera to save a bit of money. These are very, very poor people. They live on about $10 a week.
Okay. What country is this?
In Kenya.
In Kenya. Okay.
Kibera, yeah. And the reason to get them to save money is not for retirement. They will never reach retirement. That's not an option in the slum. They would die much younger. But what happened is somebody who lives hand to mouth, have no extra income. What happens when something bad happens? Maybe they get sick, their goat stop producing milk, whatever it is. They're in a deficit and they can't scale their expenses down, not much. So what do? They borrow. They can borrow 10% a week if they're in Kibera, or they have to sell stuff. So what happens is that poor people live on the edge, and when something bad happens, they just deteriorate. So we want them to have a little rainy day fund. So imagine what would happen if I said, look, pick your regular wallet in your right pocket and your saving wallet in your left pocket. You would spend it. You walk around Kibera, there's fruit, there's water, there's kerosene. These people, they walk to get kerosene for the lamp at night with a Ziploc bag. And they fill it with a tiny amount, right, for 2 cents. I mean, it's amazing.
Kerosene?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They walk 15, 20 minutes to the kerosene store, somebody fills it, a tiny amount. I mean, if they had a couple of more cents, they would get more water. I mean, they would get things.
Right. The concept of saving is almost, it's inconceivable to them.
That's right.
Because there's so many more immediate needs right there.
That's right.
Okay.
So the first principle is that we needed to create savings where it's easy to put money in on the spur of the moment, but hard to get it out. If it's easy to get it out, they'll get it out. So we teamed up with M-Pesa.
Like a piggy bank.
Yes. So we teamed up with M-Pesa. M-Pesa is the Kenyan payment company. Online, they can use dumb phone, not feature phones, and basic every phone. And we teamed up with investment bank. And people could text money into their M-Pesa account to save, and every night the money moved automatically to the savings account. So you could put it in very easily. It would move to the bank, and then it would be difficult to get out. You couldn't get it through M-Pesa. You had to take a bus, go to the city, fill a form, wait an hour, take a bus back. And this was on purpose because you wanted there to be some friction. You wanted that if there was a real emergency, people could have access to this money, but you didn't want everything to become a real emergency.
Okay.
And then...
how did that work?
Okay, so wait, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
So we gave this system, right? Think about this, the base. Some people just got the base system. Some people, they got the base system plus a weekly reminder that said, try and save 100 shillings, about $1 this week. Some people got the same message, but it was pretended as if it came from their kids. Hi mom, hi dad, this is little Joseph, whatever the name of the kid was. Try and save 100 shillings for our family. Another group got a 10% match. Save up to 100 shillings, we'll give you 10%. Another group got a 20% match. Two other groups also got 10% and 20%, but they got it together with loss aversion. So if you remember, loss aversion is the idea that we hate losing more than we enjoy gaining.
Yeah.
If you lose £1,000 today and you gain £1,000 tomorrow, they will not balance each other out. The losses will be psychologically more painful. You would need to gain £2,000 to make up for the pain. The ratio is about 2 to 1.
Is it 2 to 1 for that? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Now,
goes for social media comments as well, right? Yeah.
You read social media comments?
I try not to.
Yeah. There you go, right? I mean, how many...
There's no upside.
Yes.
Because it's probably more like 5 to 1 for the social media. So, yeah, how many negatives will make a positive?
That's right. So you have 10%, 20%. Now, loss aversion means that people would see the money they did not match. So imagine somebody is in a 10% condition and they put 40 shillings in and we give them 4 more. They've given up on 6, but they don't see the 6 that they gave up, they only see the 4 that they got. Right? So we said, what if we put the match in the beginning of the week? Here's 10 shillings. Potentially it's yours. And if people put 40 in, we say, oh, you put 40, we leave 4 in and we take 6 back. It's the same thing as putting 4,
right?
But it shows people the money leaving their account. So it has this loss aversion element. And then the last condition we had was we created a coin about this size and we had 24 numbers written on the edge of the coin. And we asked people to put the coin somewhere in their hut and every week take a knife and scratch the number for that week. Week 1, 2, 3, 4. Scratch it this way if you didn't save and this way if you saved. And it was somewhere public in the house. Now think about all of those methods. Nothing, text from kids, 10%, 20%, beginning of the week, end of the week, and the coin. How did they work? The control condition, just giving people a system that made it difficult for them to take money out, already helped. People started saving, which means that the very, very poor want help with impulse control. They want a system that would help them put money away without being able to take it back. Weekly reminder helped a lot. 10% at the end of the week helped some more. 20% at the end of the week, just like 10%. No
really?
Difference. Yeah.
No difference.
No difference. 10% in the beginning of the week, loss aversion, helps some more. 20% at the beginning of the week, just like 10%. Again, no difference. And kids, the message from the kids were just like 10 and 20% in the beginning of the week. And that's one of the first amazing things about this research is to realize how powerful kids are, what a powerful motivation they are. But the real surprise was the coin, because the coin more than doubled savings compared to everything else. And I have to say I didn't predict that. I was curious about the coin, but I didn't think it would be that effective. Now, why was the coin so effective? What was it about it? And I'll tell you how I started thinking about the coin. So I was in Soweto.
Gamification somehow, this coin.
So, yes. but gamification is such a general term. Let me tell you more specifically.
Okay.
So I was in Soweto in South Africa, and I sit there in a place where they sell funeral insurance. Have you been to South Africa?
No, I haven't. No. I've been to South Africa, yes, but not Soweto.
So funerals in South Africa are very, very expensive. People spend up to a year to 2 years of income on funerals. Wow. Right? I'm guessing in the UK it's probably weddings, right? That people
probably, yeah. So this is a cultural thing for South Africa.
It's a cultural thing, right? Weddings not as big.
That's how you honor people.
That's right. Weddings not so big. And by the way, we can argue which one is more rational.
Yes.
Because funeral, at least you know for sure you'll have only one. And anyway, but so I sit in this place that sells funeral insurance, and this father comes in and he buys funeral insurance for a week, right? Which means that it only applies, it would only cover him if he dies in the next 7 days. Right? This is a very poor man. He buys small amount of soap and small amount of insurance and so on. And he gets a certificate, in a very ceremonious way gives it to his son. And as he does this, I think to myself, why the ceremony? Why is he doing? Now, think about the following. Imagine a breadwinner who takes money from their income today and puts it into saving or insurance. What is the family going to see tonight? They're going to see less.
Yes.
Right? If you're at the level of poverty, there's going to be less kerosene, less water, less food, whatever it is, something is going to be less tonight. If you're not that poor, it will be something less this week or this month. And even if you're kind of middle income and you put money away, also there'll be less. I mean, at some point it will be less. And what it made me realize is that some of our most important economic activities are invisible. Now, think about 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, how did we save? Basically in goats, livestock.
Right.
And what's the nice thing about saving in goats is that you can come home at night and you could see how many goats your neighbor has. You can compete on who has more goats. We could compete on who has more savings. So imagine we have two activities, spending and saving and insurance. And over time, we invent money and digital money, and we take this saving and insurance and make it invisible. And we take the spending activity and we make gardens and cars and trips abroad, and we make it more and more visible.
Right, okay.
How much attention can people pay to those activities? So the certificate that his father used and then the coin was basically this idea of showing the family there's another economic activity. It's not food, but it's also not perfectly invisible. There's something else happening, and we can track it as a family, and we should unite around it and understand that it's not less, it's just different. But of course, the reason I love this research is it got me thinking, and you can say, oh, isn't it obvious that saving and insurance became invisible? It wasn't obvious to me,
right?
But now I'm thinking, okay, so if one of the main reasons that we can't care a lot about insurance and savings is because they're invisible, how do we make them more visible? What as a society can we do to make them more visible and therefore get people to care more about them?
Right. And so that coin being marked each day showed the family that we were saving for the future.
That's right.
And it was a tangible sign that we were doing the right action.
That's right.
Almost kind of like an award or a medal. Look, I get to wear the gold medal I saved for the family today, and everyone would value that at the dinner table.
That's right.
And so hence they did it more.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And so back in the day, you'd have the goats or the cows, and so as opposed to the conspicuous consumption,
That's right.
It was the conspicuous savings.